Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure to be here, and well, many things have happened since last year, when I made the same presentation last year. So, well, I've changed a little bit the title of my topic because there's a new proposed immigration bill, and it has an impact on real estate as well, because it talks about increased numbers of visas, H-1B visas. It talks about accelerated family immigration. However, it also cancels some types of visas, such as diversity visa or visa lottery, as you may know, and also, let's see, the sibling types of visas. There will be legalization. They expect to have legalization, guest worker program. There's also W visa for low-skilled workers, and an agricultural type of visa, which will replace the present H-2A program, and a guest worker program. So hopefully, all of these will take place, but these are conditioned upon the fact that the government will put in place a border security strategy, as well as fencing strategy. And they don't expect that these benefits, immigration benefits, will take place until there's some certainty that these strategies will be put in place. Also, there will be they expect a mandatory E-Verify program so that all workers will have to be verified for their employment eligibility. Lastly, there will be an electronic entry and exit system, and that's going to be taking place soon. Between, I believe, the first week of May, they will be putting in place the electronic entry and exit system. So it seems to me like immigration reform is happening. I mean, every year since 2001, there have been attempts to have comprehensive immigration reform. However, every year the bill dies, and I hope that this time it works out. In the last year, we were able to see, some positive immigration benefits, such as an act to provide employment authorization for children who came in before 2007, June 15, 2007, and who were present on or before June 15, 2012. So that's one good development. And another good development is the unlawful presence provisional waiver. And this applies to people who cross the border, who are married to U.S. citizens, who have been living here for a long, long time, and yet they cannot legalize their stay because the law is worded in such a way that they cannot apply for the green card in the United States, and that they would need to exit in order to apply for their green cards. But then, when they exit, they cannot come back because there's a provision in the law that bars them from returning for at least 10 years. So it's a difficult, immigrants are really being given a very difficult time to legalize their stay if they have a little bit of violation in their status. So anyway, I don't mean to talk on and on and on about immigration because I know this is not an immigration forum, but let me talk briefly about the E2 visas and the E1 visas as opposed to the EB5. I know you've heard a lot about EB5s, but the E2 visas perhaps is a little bit something that is not often dealt with. Has anyone dealt with investors who are here on a non-immigrant visa? No? Yes? What was your experience?
Very. Depends on if they have a co-signer or there's various, they have cash,
Mm-hmm.
they have student visa, all these different things. That's, every case is different.
Okay.
You have to sift through and actually have someone, excuse me, you have to have someone, tell you legally what they can do.
Okay, yeah,
This
yeah.
is what it came down to. What it comes down to.
Because, well, okay, so before I proceed, let me just tell you that this is, I would prefer to do this into, turn this into a Q&A kind of situation. In case you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. But what I wanted to talk about was the treaty traders and treaty investors visas. As you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about the AB5 program we're in. People, investors need to invest at least $1 million if it's a direct investment, or $500,000 if it's an indirect investment through a regional center. And that this leads to the green card. Originally, at first, it's a conditional green card that's good for 2 years, and then the immigrant can turn the green card into a permanent green card if they're able to prove that they were able to generate at least 10 jobs for local workers, not their spouses, not their children, not people who are on an H-1B visa, but green card holders, US citizens, people who have been granted asylum status, or refugees, and those who are here on, say, cancellation of removal, meaning they were previously in deportation proceedings, but because they meet certain conditions, they are allowed to be here as permanent residents. So, I mean, I just blurted out a lot of information, and really, immigration law is a very complex topic, and I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of this. Yes, sir?
Does the number of employees that your investment creates, does it differ whether it's a direct investment or it's an indirect investment?
No, it doesn't differ. It's still 10 jobs, and the 10 jobs, say for example, through a regional center could be attributed to the business, the jobs created through that regional center, or a business that is affiliated with a regional center. Yes. So now that's the EB5 in a nutshell, made very simple. Now, there are people who would like to invest or who would like to set up their businesses in the United States, but they don't have that enough money. They don't have 500,000. How much more? They don't have $1 million. So, well, the treaty investor visa allows people who have less amount of money to be able to set up their businesses here. So it starts with a business plan. They have to have a business plan, and they have to be able to invest a substantial sum of money so that way they're able to successfully operate the business. And that the USCIS is very particular with the source of the investment. It has to come from legitimate sources. So the investor must come here to direct the business and or manage the business. At the same time, they have to own at least 50% of the business, so that way the business that they create is considered an E2 business. Well, there are companies or foreign companies that set up businesses here, and the managers can also come in on an E2 status. So they're not investing, but they are employees of a foreign company that sets up in the United States. So now the good thing about E2 and E1, E1 is for treaty traders. The good thing about E2 visas is that the spouse can obtain employment authorization. That way the spouse can also work, and that's a very good way that's really a good system, because then the spouse can be productive. So the other requirement of this E2 visa is that the income from the business must be more than marginal. Meaning to say, it's not only generating income for the support of the family or the investor, but it's meant to create business jobs also, although it's not a requirement to continue the visa. So the E2 visa is good for 2 years initially. I mean, every 2 years, it's extended every 2 years. And, well, it can be extended indefinitely as long as the business is ongoing. There are two ways of doing it. If the person happens to be in the United States, they can change their status into the E2. Say, for example, someone is here on a B1, business visitor's visa, or a visitor for pleasure, and they have found a good opportunity, and they're really serious about pursuing and setting up a business. So then they can change their status from B2 or B1 to E2. But normally, if a person is applying from abroad, there's no application to be filed in the United States. All they need to do is to compile all the documents that they need to present to the U.S. Embassy to show that there's a serious intent to set up a business in the United States and manage that business successfully. Yes?
So in order to go through this process, you came in as a visitor, found a worthy investment. How long does it take to move from the B1 or 2 to the E2?
Oh, it's very quick. As long as everything is in place. Let me answer you by way of example. I have a client. She was here on the B1, B2. I first came in as a tourist, and then she found this opportunity. And she changed her status, she extended her status to B2. And then she was able to put together the paperwork to apply for the necessary licenses, and she was able to put up a home health agency. And, well, of course, you know what that means. It entailed buying real estate for her to set up her business. And it took only 15 days. I think it's less than 15 days because there's a process, there's a premium process, wherein if the applicant applies for, pays an extra amount of money, it's $1,225, the application that normally takes about 3 to 4 months takes only 15 days to process. So if everything is well documented, then immigration can do it within the period of time. Yes, sir?
I had a question on the EB-5. If the person who has goal is to get permanent residency through that $1 million investment, say they start, build a hotel from scratch, and then they get the 10 employees after it's up and running. When does that 10 employees for that person start ticking, the clock tick, so that they qualify for that?
It starts from the very beginning. Like you gotta start, within a 2-year period, you have to create at least 10 jobs.
So they can have somebody construct a brand new hotel, get the 10 employees in place under a, what was that? 2 years.
2 years.
And you've got eligible.
I believe so. I mean, you've constructed, well
yeah, even if the construction workers are not full-time, how does that?
Yeah, it has to be, as long as the jobs are created, it has to be 10 full-time jobs. Sorry.
Even from scratch, from the very beginning?
Correct, yes. So, yeah. Now, have I answered your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then, I mentioned earlier about the treaty trader program. That's another way of setting up a business here, as long as there's a substantial trade of goods or services between the United States and a certain country. So there are, so this is trade, and then E2 means investment, and so there are the E1 and the E2 programs are based on treaty of friendship, commerce, or navigation, or a bilateral investment treaty between the United States and the country. I know that this is a seminar for South Africans and people from Jamaica and Grenada. Well, there is an E2 program between Jamaica and the United States, as well as with the United States, but unfortunately there's none yet with South Africa. So, so that's not a program that's available. At the same time, it's not available to people from China, India, other countries. There are 4 other countries. China and India definitely are not. Brazil, I think, is not in the E2 program. So any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Now, going back to the EB5,
Uh-huh.
what success stories do you have from that? Can you come, I mean, there was a news not too long ago.
Oh, about that successful story?
Right.
Let's talk about that first. Well, this is a program called a Chicago Convention Center, ACC. And you've heard about that? And anyway, this program, well, a 29-year-old gentleman from Chicago claimed to have 15 years of experience selling securities. So he must have started really early. So anyway, he was getting investors mostly from China, but also from other countries. And I believe the commission was like $49,000 per investor. So I think he was able to gain at least 2.5 million, most of which is in Hong Kong, in a bank in Hong Kong. So anyway, one of the investors asked around. They called the Hyatt and other hotels, I think, and lo and behold, they found out that the LEED convention center was not even set up. There was not even groundbreaking. So there's a pending action at the 7th Circuit regarding this matter. It's SEC versus ACCC. That's the case. But I mean, a lot of people have been successful in the EB5 program. I mean, but you know, in any kind of application or program, there's always fraud. People will always try to cash in the quickest way possible. And that's unfortunate, but that's how it is in this world. Sir?
How many successful EB5 investments, to your knowledge, have been done in the Chicago area?
Oh, I don't have that statistic, sorry. I can get back to you if you give me your number.
I'm just curious. I'm not asking for a specific number, just because I've been hearing about EB5 for a long time, and I also heard about the problems with it, with fraud and so forth, and that. Correct.
So, I mean, well, let me just say that there's a limit of 10,000 visas a year, and historically that number of visas have not been used up. But I think I sort of read somewhere that there's some sort of a waiting list or something like that, but I'm not so certain about that.
Yeah, one other question, I'm sorry. Can the people that you employ, can some of them be relatives?
For the EB5 program?
Yes.
No. It has to be, no, not spouses, not children. It has to be local workers. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are, a real estate practitioner and you have somebody who is a foreign investor, you want to make that part of your services that you do as a realtor, what are maybe some of the obvious things that you should look for to make sure that this isn't somebody trying to commit fraud? I mean, I know there's a lot of details, but is there one or two things that, if you hear this, run, or if you hear that, you better report them, or...
You're talking about with respect to the investor, or?
The investor calls you and says, I want you to be my broker and represent this development.
Right. Okay, yeah, well, first of all, I guess you have to ask the questions.
Right.
I mean, let's talk about the investment. What is it about? What is the investment? Because, they can present, I guess fraud can be presented in so many ways, so it's kind of hard to zero in on one or two words. But ask questions, make sure that you're not being, part of a fraudulent scheme. So make sure that all the necessary applications through USCIS are there. And, there's a lot of agencies involved. Department of Homeland Security, SEC, ASCA, who is their lawyer, things like those.
You mentioned about 4 countries that were not eligible for the EB-5 program. Can you name some large countries that we'd be familiar with that you could say that I've seen this go through?
Mm-hmm. Oh, from those.
Like England, Australia.
Oh yeah, Germany, Japan. There's a lot of.
Where do you see most of it coming in? What countries?
I'm sorry, I didn't do my assignment. No, but there's a lot from the European countries. Yeah, mostly from Europe. I mean, I should have done that bit. So anyway, so visit this website to see who is, which countries are allowed to do E1s or E2s. Some of them are just limited to E1s or E2s, but others are, can do both. Going back to the new rules. Not new rules, but the proposed bill. So there's a lot of, there will be legalization of family members, and so I think that would have a great impact on real estate. As family members are united, and as business is getting better, there will be more H-1Bs. And I think the impact of more H-1Bs, that's from the 65,000 limit that they have this time, it will be increased to 110,000, and they'll check the market and see whether or not it should be increased. There's a limit of up to 180,000. I mean, historically and statutorily, the limit is 65,000. So you can just imagine if there's an increase in the H-1B program, these people or these professionals are allowed to have dual intent, meaning to say that they are allowed to apply for permanent residency eventually, even though this is a non-immigrant visa, and they'll eventually have their homes here. So that's a good sign, I guess, for your industry. There's the United States trying to be competitive to India and other countries, and so we now have what they call the STEM professions. That's science, technology, engineering, and math. And there will be 25,000 visas allocated to professionals in this field, on top of the increased H-1B program. And by the way, for your information, the H-1B program for 2014, for the fiscal year 2014, has now been used up as of April 5, 2013. So that's how popular the H-1B program is. So the STEM professionals will also fall under the H-1B program. And so the government's trying to allow a guest worker program so that way, I guess it's a way to stop illegal immigration also. And then there will be more agricultural workers to work in our agricultures, agricultures. I guess you've seen in the past pictures in the newspapers about rotting fruits, rotting vegetables because they're not being picked because the workers who are trying to cross the border are being sent back. And there will be a visa for house cleaners, construction workers, for those who are in the lower skilled level. And I forgot to include here the dreamers, the children who are here. That's a favorite program of our Senator Durbin. Will be allowed to apply for the green card. That's the proposal. And so people who will be working in the agricultural jobs as well as the dreamers will be given an easier time to apply for the green card. They will be in what they call, they will be able to apply for the green card after 5 years from participating in this program if it takes effect. Whereas the others will have to wait 10 years. Those who are not here legally will have to wait 10 years to be able to apply for a green card eventually. So, and also the condition is that those who are already in the queue should be allowed to apply for the green card first, and I think it's only fair. So, how are we in terms of time? Yeah, I'm fine? Okay. Okay. So now I just would like to include this topic about consumer protection and unauthorized practice of law. For this program year, I happen to be the national chair of the Committee on Consumer Protection and Unauthorized Practice of Law of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And we're doing massive education of consumers not to rely on unauthorized practitioners of law. And I believe that you get in touch with a lot of immigrants. And I just wanted to let you know that I have outside some flyers about unauthorized practice of law. So if you would please just grab a few so that you have it in your offices. There's been a lot of how do you call, bad things happening because people rely on unauthorized practitioners of law. Oftentimes, people are afraid to go to lawyers because of the, financial commitment. They don't know anyone, or maybe they don't have the language capability, and so they tend to, rely on their friends, relatives, but at the same time, people from the same country who speak the same language, and not knowing that the person may not be able to deliver the help they're looking for. And there's been a lot of sorry situations where people lose their money, they're not able to avail of immigration benefits, they may be placed in removal proceedings, and there could be long separation between family members, or among family members. And so, whenever there's an opportunity for me to talk, I always bring this up. And there's a wonderful website. It's called stopnotariofraud.org. Oh gosh, I didn't put it in here, but it's in here. It's called stopnotariofraud.org. It's in Spanish, English, Chinese, and Polish. And it's a wonderful resource for those who are being defrauded to find out how they can seek redress, who could help them, and there's a strong collaboration between the American Immigration Lawyers Association and the American Bar Association to help those who are being victimized. So there's a pro bono program to help victims of unauthorized practice of law.
Has there been any cases brought?
Sorry?
Has the ABA taken
Oh.
any action?
A lot of actions. There are criminal and civil actions being brought up. The attorney generals around the country are very active in going after this problem, because it's a problem that's not only contained within the United States, it's also, especially because of the internet, it has become so big that it's also being perpetrated abroad, actually. They're like visa consultants, travel agencies. And here, unfortunately, in areas where there's tax preparation, there's always a tendency of, being subject unauthorized practitioners of law. So the city of Chicago has been active as well in going after notario fraud, they call it. They call it notario because in the Latin countries, Hispanic countries, a notario is looked at as someone who is authorized to give advice. And when people immigrate here, they still have that mentality that a notario in the United States is authorized to practice or provide advice. So, with that, I would like to open to more questions, if you have any questions. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to the topic. We could talk about family-based immigration if you would like, if you have questions along those lines. Yes, sir?
if we're working with someone that needs help on any of these different programs, are you a good source to send them?
I think the answer is yes. Well, yes, I mean, seriously,
Well, because even ourselves, when we're advising these people or talking to people, we have this tendency to maybe give some legal advice
correct,
a
yes.
little bit. So we really need to have, if we're going to practice this, we're going to need to have sources to send people to.
Yes, and yeah. So there are only two sources people who are authorized to practice or to give advice. A licensed lawyer, immigration is a federal practice. So any immigration lawyer who's licensed anywhere in the United States is eligible to give legal advice on immigration. Also, the Board of Immigration Appeals has an accreditation program. Certain individuals who are associated with accredited agencies may assist in the immigration field. So I can name a few like Centro, Romero, Latinos Progresando. Those are the agencies that are, Erie House I think is also authorized to help. Well, it's a limited basis in the sense that they probably don't, unless they're lawyers, they probably don't have a lot of knowledge, but yeah, nonprofit organizations may, who are accredited by the Board of Immigration Appeals, may help in that regard. How are we on time?
It's just right.
I think it's just right on the money. Thank you.